Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. I am Jill Trotterman with Feeding the Family, and today we're going to be talking about becoming a bee whisperer and connecting to the hive and to our collective community. And I have with us today Colin George. He is the founder of Honeydew Gardens. Welcome, Colin.
Hey there.
Hey there. So, beekeeping and homesteading are rising trends in North American households. Over 125 years ago, most folks embraced the homesteading lifestyle because that's pretty much the only thing that was going on. But today, we are so disconnected from food and land, and I see this great desire to reconnect to our food and to the natural cycles of life. And I'm wondering, is that nostalgia or are we tapping into a collective memory of something? So, one family who is definitely embracing this way of lifestyle is Colin George. So, together, he and his wife, Shalray, run Honeydew Gardens. And they are retired veterans who moved to Santa Cruz in 2017. And they just fell in love with the climate and people. The creative couple brought a humble 2-acre piece of property in Aptos, California, and since then they have acquired 20 hives, fruit trees, chickens, and quail. They love the idea of helping to create their own food locally. Currently, Colin and Ray Ray just sell their items at local farmers markets. And it turns out they love it and look forward to interacting with the community. Honeydew Gardens was created to help encourage local food production. All right, Colin. So what can people learn today from you? Let's dive into the magical world of bees. And how
Yeah.
did you get started in this and what was your motivation?
Well, my really the my motivation um, is the context for my entire life. It started from everybody has their own story, um, and this is just the latest chapter in the context of my life. Um, Actually, I was when I was 13. Life was pretty hard. I had a pretty rough upbringing, and there was a time when I was actually living on the streets and young guy. And up to this point in my life, I was raised an atheist, and so up to this point, I just felt like my life was going to be a product of my environment. And now that I was on the streets, I didn't think the prospects were so good. So
Wow,
there
that's
was
pretty
this,
intense.
yeah, yeah, and there's good news because we end up to where we are today. But when I was on the streets, I remember this time I was sitting outside of a grocery store I used to steal cheese from, and I remember thinking, very matter of fact, even as a kid, that I would grow up and be a drug addict and either die young or spend my life in prison. And turns out that I was an atheist at the time, but you know, the Lord had other plans. And
Hmm.
so my grandma eventually got me off the street. Got me off the street. She was in South Dakota, and I was in Northern California at the time. And so my grandma lived on a farm. And so over the course of the rest of my childhood, I started to learn about Jesus. I started to understand, the gospel, the fact that and what some of the things that helped me understand it were the Passover, the this idea that death passes over us, this idea that um, just to pause for a second, when you come from a traumatic situation like that, um, all that stuff, all that junk gets into you, right? And there is this risk that you let all that define you, right? And that is who you are.
Right, right.
And that's what I was contending with. And the gospel told me that Jesus would be able to wash all that away and through substitution. That all the things that were done to me would be cleansed and washed away, and all the things that I've done, I could be forgiven of. And so what that allowed me to do was to look back at all those things and actually believe that I'm a new person.
Mm,
You know what I mean? That
that's
and
major.
yeah, and that set me up for the rest of my life. And so I didn't end up going into foster care for my grandma's place. But when I got out, I joined the Air Force. Met my wife in the Air Force. She's Air Force as well. We did our time. We got out. We both went to college together. I got my degree in electrical engineering. She got her degree and a master's in social work, and we had a family.
Colin,
And so
that's just an amazing story.
yeah, there's a lot of a lot more details
I'm
to it,
sure. But
but
you found, but religion or Jesus, I guess,
yeah,
saved you. I mean, people do say Jesus saves.
yeah, that's right.
And that's beautiful that you were touched by those teachings.
Yeah, and that creates
And the
the
farming
context,
too, right? So it's a
right? Yeah,
combination of your grandma and
yeah,
spirituality.
yep. That created a So that experience on my grandma's farm um, would set me up later on, so that I wouldn't be afraid to dive into these things because I had seen it, I'd participated in it, I kind of had an idea of what the whole day-to-day routines look like and things like that. Yeah, and so that I was doing engineering, and COVID came along, um, and so the other thing about that creates that context is this relationship that I have with the Lord, and I pray and talk to Him all the time. So I was like just cruising and playing video games, drinking beer, and I felt like the Lord was putting on my heart to not waste my life like that, and
Right.
so I started I we ended up getting quail first, I believe, and then my wife really wanted bees, and I've been watching all those YouTube videos on which animals you should get, everything like that, and I heard that those were one of the hardest things to do,
Yeah.
and so so but
But
my
I know your
wife.
wife, and I can see that in her.
Yeah,
She's like, "No, we
you
can
know my
handle
wife.
that, honey. We can. We can do.
Yeah,
We can do
yeah,
bees."
yeah. So that's how it happened. She batted her eyes, and I was like, all right, let's go get some. So we got started out with two hives, and then that actually, I'm relatively early on in bees. My engineering kind of background, I've with my history being an aircraft mechanic and an engineer, I learn. I've taught myself how to learn, and so that's helped me out in this endeavor. So we've been able to get our hives up from 2 to 20, and that goes up and down. We lose hives every once in a while, but that's where we're at now. And we've got quail, and we've got chickens, and producing eggs, and we've got a garden. So um, as I was feeling that kind of push to get out there, get off my gaming chair, and go out there and actually get out and get my hands dirty, I started learning a lot. You know,
Yeah, and bees are
and one
not some easy thing, nor are quails. So it sounds like you have
right,
quails and bees and a bunch of fruit trees.
yeah, yeah. Planting the fruit trees. Gophers been, man, gophers are. I made a big mistake in planting my gopher tree or my trees outside of gopher baskets, and so they killed two of them. But so if anybody's thinking about planting gopher trees or trees, think about the gophers.
Yeah, Colin, you
Um,
have so many gifts to share with everybody because let me just say, starting off as a homesteader with bees is not it's not like the easiest entry into that kind of lifestyle.
no,
And
no,
I know about the gophers and they're relentless, but
yeah, yeah,
but when you have faith like you do, I
hmm
guess that gives you purpose to continue on and connect to nature and knowing that
right,
nature has a way of correcting itself and
yeah. Yeah, I feel like and I moved through all this stuff knowing that me and my wife are alone. And
right.
so,
Mm.
right, and you talk about community, and So that's it started like that. Well, me and my wife aren't alone, but I really started to care about our community and the food in our community.
Right.
So one of the things that I saw when I was back in South Dakota, and also which is apparent to me now, is something you just talked about in your introduction, which is the disconnection from us to our food, and it has really profound impacts on our society, on individuals, really profound. Um, when I was in South Dakota, one thing you see in especially in the Midwest is how these towns, their populations are either stagnant or dropping. And the reason for that is that in these towns in the Midwest, these were the food basket, the bread basket, for our country and the world, still is, but it's being produced not by, family farms, but by corporate farming.
Right.
And so what would
Hmm.
happen in these areas is that these family farms would get incorporated into larger farms, and so and the families from these areas would essentially disperse. The kids would move, go to college and move to um, urban areas, and the population would drop. And one of the things I've also noticed is, and that's also is a problem when you want to go back to that, because corporate farms produce food at a you know, much cheaper. They sell food for cheaper too. So, no family farm can really compete with those prices.
Mm-hmm.
Um, right. So you don't see people graduating, or, graduating high school and say, I want to be a farmer. Right? Well, they go into agriculture, but they go into agricultural science or something like that in support of these corporate farms. And that's something that actually one of my cousins did. He doesn't farm himself, but he got a degree in ag so that he can support the corporate farming system. And so the that makes and so when we go back to having our homesteads, our family farms, right, you're really fighting against a current,
Mm-hmm.
um, right? And especially and that's why a lot of us, we're not making our income from, or we're not getting our full income. It's usually a side gig or something like that. And so
Why do you think
yeah,
it's important? Like sharing about the towns that are stagnant or declining in populations, and the kids don't want to take over their farming like they did in past generations when it would just get passed down from generation to generation. Now, these big giant corporate entities are coming in, which I think is miserable. And it
yeah,
is changing the quality of our food. They use more pesticides.
right. I
Um,
think the answer to that,
yeah, let's
you
hear
can
it.
do a whole podcast on it.
I know. I've had
But
some people. We talk on it because this is really important
yeah,
to me. Food and where
I'll
our
give
food's
you.
coming from and the quality and the energy. You talk about
Yeah,
spirituality, and I think maybe our food is even devoid of that essence of the cosmic.
yeah, yeah. So I'll give you my perspective on it. Okay, so um, one of the things that really started motivating me. Okay, so when I first started doing this, I was really thinking about my own family, and but what you saw during COVID, and this is that how delicate the supply chains are. Okay, um, and what you ended up seeing is that a lot of things that a lot of things were changed that you kind of wouldn't expect to change. You know, it was kind of really surreal. And one of the things that I noticed was people's interest in local foods perked for a little bit. Now, that might have died out a little bit since then, but there was a time where people became a little more um, sensitive to the fact that their food supplies or these supply chains are delicate, and that includes our food supply. And so I started thinking, okay, well, the geopolitical world that we live in is um, is really delicate right now, more so than I mean than I could ever remember. And the because of the way the corporate food system works, most areas in our country can't support their own population from the local food production.
Wow. Can you just
Um,
please say that one more time?
yeah, most areas in the United States where people live, that area they live in can't support that population from the food that's being produced locally.
Right.
And so if the food supply shuts down for any reason, you're going to have a huge disparity and possibly starvation.
This is a scary
And
thing, and I do see that. Like some people will say that most people's food on their dinner plate comes from 1,000 miles away. For instance, if
yeah,
you're on the East Coast, a lot of food is coming from California, or the Midwest or
you
whatnot.
know, yeah. And I really, and the thing that I really want to emphasize, and I really say it as strongly as just is that we shouldn't assume that things are always going to be like this.
Right.
You know,
Yep.
I mean, you just look at the world. In a moment, the world changed when COVID came out, right?
Yep. That's right.
And then uh, you have what we have. There's war in the Middle East right now. There's war, um, in Europe. Um, we're gonna start seeing an interruption to the oil supply, which another thing I just read on the news was that there was a Chinese person who was arrested as a pair of people, I think.
Yes,
But
I
what they
read
were,
that. Yes, I know the story you're going to share. Go ahead.
yeah, so they were carrying a biological something to attack the food supply. Essentially, I believe it was a fungus,
Mm-hmm.
and,
Mm-hmm.
and and it was they were arrested as basically, and it was categorized as biological warfare.
Yeah, in the
And
airport they were captured.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And you think, okay, this isn't conspiracy theory. This is actually happening.
It is. Yeah. I
And
listened to the
so,
story when it came out. That really freaked me out, honestly.
yeah, I mean, it's incredibly for us who are as a nation so reliant on the corporate food supply. That is incredibly dangerous. If you think about the fact that the areas that we live in cannot support the population with the food that they produce, that's scary. And so there are, and then you've got they're saying that they believe that we'll be at war with China by 2027. Um, you've got ver- there's been some scares like we had the chickens that were killed off or were euthanized, a huge majority, and we went through that egg shortage. And so it's almost like these things kind of like randomly popping up, and you take two or three of those happen at the same time, and all of a sudden we got some major problems, right? And so as I was, doing the farming and thinking, okay, I'm gonna create foundation to be able to supply food for my own family if things get short, and we got to enjoy that benefit with the chickens because eggs. um and then I thought, okay, well, i I felt like the Lord did wanted me to care about the community too. And
Hmm.
so I started thinking about, because he cares about the community. And so I started thinking about, well, what can I do? you know well, one of the things I as I kind of went through this thought process, I thought, well, how do I support my community? And I thought, okay, well, there's these other people in the community that are like me, where they produce, right? And let's say, and what we were doing this too, we were producing more than we can consume at first. And what we were doing was giving it away.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were like, well, I mean, are we really going to do this? Because it's not very motivating. It doesn't motivate you to produce more, right? To do that. And so we started doing the farmers markets. And I started thinking, well, why don't we do that? I mean, one of the experiences that we had with the farmers markets is they're all packed, and we couldn't get into a farmers market. And that's when you did yours. We were like, this is great. Okay, we're going to get off. You know, we're going to get a spot. We're going to secure a spot. And as this thing grows, we'll have our spot, and we'll get in the ground level. You know what I mean? Because we were really struggling finding a farmers market that would give us access. And when this started to be heavy on my heart, on my mind, I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to create a farmers market. And it's nothing new or crazy or anything like that, but it's me doing my part, right? Because if I can provide a venue for others like me to get their products to the market, to the consumers, then they'll be motivated to not, they'll instead of throttling back on their production, they might be motivated to increase their production. Maybe what will happen with them is what happened with me, is that you end up really enjoying it, and you have a reason to do more, or to go get deeper in it, or get better at it, or anything like that. You know what I mean?
I do, yeah, and so many things are popping into my mind. Like, it's true, I did have a market, and for different reasons, I didn't continue with it. And one was because the county was charging the food vendors a lot more money to participate than the other vendors because we weren't considered a farmer's market. So there's all
Yeah.
these weird loopholes with our county of Santa Cruz. As much as we love Santa Cruz, it was almost we lost a lot of our food vendors.
Yeah.
And my whole thing was about food. I wanted to do a food market. In hindsight, I probably should have created more of a farmer's market. But now, Colin, it sounds like you and Ray Ray, I don't want to spill the beans, but
Spill them, spill them.
spill them. But I think you guys bought a piece of property
That's right.
and
We
you're going to
did.
create a market there.
Yes, yes.
Okay,
We're in the permitting. We're in the process of permitting, which is going to take a
sweet.
while.
Right.
So,
And you'll
so
create a proper farmer's market, so it'll be food, all food based, right?
yeah. One thing's, well, it's going to be called a produce market, and
Ah,
so
interesting. Okay.
yeah. So the way this thing works is that so farmers markets, apparently, I mean, the way I understood the regulations, they can't be on private property. They have to be on public property.
Oh, no way. Is that true? So that's really interesting.
That's
I wonder if
that's the
that
way I'm
was,
reading it.
huh?
Yeah. So to quote, call it a farmers market.
Right.
Now, what
Hmm.
in order to do this, and this we're still in the permitting process, we're learning, but in order to do this, you have to have property that is 75% of it committed to food production. And so, and with that, you can have a produce market.
I see. Okay. So
Yeah,
you're going to make a farm out there, it sounds like.
yeah, we got to do that. And
Nice.
so, yeah, yeah, we're going from our little space, and we're gonna move most of it over there, and we're gonna scale things up.
This
And
is
so,
exciting. So you're not scared of the competing against the big producers because I think what needs to happen is more of you.
well, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
And here's the thing: is like that's that whole where that whole faith thing comes in, is because I don't feel like I'm doing it alone, and
mm,
the person, the Lord on my side's a lot stronger than um than the regulations in the county. So
that's true.
that's that's the way I look at it. You know what I mean?
That's true.
That's the way I'm looking at it.
Well, we
So
do get callings to do things, whether you believe in
yeah,
Jesus or Allah or Moses or whomever is whoever you pray to, whether it's to the
yeah,
trees, the ocean, your higher self, whatever it is. I think that's
yeah,
something that's missing right now in our society too.
yeah.
Okay, but this is
Well,
exciting. But you're having this faith that you're being called to bring more food. And let me just tie you into the bees because
okay.
bees give back to the community. They're
Uh-huh.
hive mind, and we've gone through a
Right.
big individualistic state in the United States where me, me,
Uh-huh.
me, I have a podcast, but there's a million podcasts and the social media. And maybe we are being called to how can we be more of service to one another and to each
Hmm.
other so we can all guarantee we will all survive and be able to
Right.
take care of each other if need
Yeah.
be, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Especially, I mean, Hollywood assumes that when shit hits the fan, everybody's gonna turn into cannibals or whatever. But that's what you kind of see in the movies. But I think there's a better precedence for communities to come together.
Right.
And I think that, and like, I'm not. I didn't just say it. I believe there's going to be a zombie apocalypse or anything. But I think that that's kind of like I think that's a better look at how things will play out the way I that's what I want. That's how I want things to play out in the future if things get hard. And so that's the role I want to play, in that. And the more of us that do that, um, I think um, the more we'll be able to see a totally different story in the way Hollywood plays it out. But um, with bees, so talking about bees, that's so here's the thing that I think a lot of people experience when they get into beekeeping. In fact, a lot of this homesteading is what you learn. It's almost addictive. It's almost like you want to learn more. You want to do better. You want to grow what you're already doing. And bees are absolutely a fascinating species.
All right. Well,
And they
with
do.
that, okay, I'm going to put you on hold for a second. We have to take a
All right.
quick commercial break.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
hold on tight, Colin. I'm with Colin George of Honeydew Gardens, and I'm your host, Jill Trotterman. We'll be right back. Hold on tight, folks.
Airfare to anywhere. Low Cost Air is the discount supermarket for all domestic and foreign airlines. A funny thing is going to happen when you call Low Cost Air. You're going to talk to a human being within 60 seconds. Save money on airfare to anywhere. Call Low Cost Air to compare at 800-704-1662. 800-704-1662.
Deer fins, wood fins, livestock chain link, vinyl, iron fins. Cypress Coast Fence. Cypress Coast Fence.
I'm Kevin Donovan, the owner of Cypress Coast Fence, Monterey Bay Area's premier fence company.
And I'm Katie Donovan, Kevin's sister. I'm one of the project coordinators. I'll help you choose the best fence for your needs, and I'll be with you for every step of the project.
We work with local suppliers and employ quality craftsmen to build the right fence to secure, protect, or privatize your property. We've been in business for 15 years and have been voted Best Fence Company for 7 years running.
Give us a call for your no-obligation consultation at 831-783-1500 or at cypresscoastfence.com.
We don't just build fences, we make good neighbors.
Deer fins, wood fins, livestock chain link, vinyl, iron fins. Cypress Coast Fence. Cypress Coast Fence.
The Hook is California's first ever cannabis outlet. 100% locally owned and operated, we're here to be your friendly neighborhood hookup. We believe that everyone should have access to fairly priced cannabis, so we work hard to get it to you for 30 to 50% less than the other guys. If you're 21 or older with a valid ID, visit us in Capitola or in Watsonville today. We're here to be your friendly neighborhood hookup. Check out our website, hookoutlet.com, for deals and stay groovy.
Okay, folks, we are back with the groovy Colin from Honeydew Gardens. All right, woo! So we're talking about bees. We all love
Yeah.
bees. They're our pollinators. They provide us with food, with medicine, beeswax, all kinds of wonderful things. So share with us more about bees and what your passion and love is for them.
Yeah. Well, one of the things you've already just mentioned is the fact that they produce a wide range of products, not just honey.
Right.
So a lot of people who buy honey right now, they're looking for in the term local honey. They're looking for honey to microdose themselves against local allergens. And so honey itself has some of that in it already. But one of the other things you can do is collect pollen and add that to the honey, and that increases the microdose. And that's actually something I was doing. And when you do that, I could tell it. And this is like I was dealing with local allergies. I could tell that it was working because when I would eat this concoction of honey and pollen, the back of my throat would start itching.
Really?
But
That's
after some,
fascinating.
yeah. So it's a lot strong when you do it that way. You're getting a much stronger microdose. But this past pollen season has been a breeze, so it really works. The other product is something called propolis. Now, propolis has these antibacterial, antifungal um, properties. And so one of the things that's true about bees is they are individuals, and they each have their individual jobs and life cycles, but they're almost as a hive like a single organism. And so propolis is like their antibiotics. And so you imagine in a tree, hollowed out tree, they'll set up their hive inside that tree, and they'll line the inside of that tree with this propolis. Um, and so since this propolis has this, it's a gummy texture, so it's very sticky. It will harden over time. Um, um, yeah, it will harden over time. So imagine these bees in the wild; they're encased by a cocoon of antibacterial, antifungal propolis. Now, what my wife does is that, I scrape, she helps collect it, I collect it. It's hard to collect, but what she does is she takes this and creates a medicinal honey, and so she will freeze it. She'll chop it up into a dust, and she will take that concoction where I talked about, where you have the honey and then you have pollen. She'll add propolis to that, and she'll call it medicinal honey.
I love
And
that. I love that so
yeah,
much. That's so
yeah.
great.
Yeah, and just because I forgot to say this already, the way me and my wife divide the labor is that I'm outside. I bring the honey in, and she does the rest.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, she does the jarring, she does the marketing, she makes the products and everything like that. My job is to go out there and take care of the bees.
Sweet.
Um,
Okay. That's so neat.
you know, so this there's another product which we haven't made yet. Okay, it's called bee bread. And
Hmm.
this is something that they make for themselves. They make it, and they use it a lot with their brood. And so bee bread is essentially, when you have pollen, what they'll do is they'll pack pollen in there. But if you add sugar to it, it'll ferment. And that fermenting is, they call it bee bread because it's a very similar process to actually making bread. Instead of flour, you've got pollen. And so what you would do to make bee bread is that you would actually do a 1-to-1 ratio of honey and pollen, and then you every day you turn it, and eventually that'll produce bee bread. That's a recipe that I've found online. I'm going to try, but you need 1-to-1 ratios for that. But it's a superfood. You just look up bee bread, and it's pretty hardcore stuff. It's a superfood to the bees too. So
Yeah, it seems like the bees have it all figured out. It's like nature, and we
yeah.
as humans keep trying to do bypass nature with our great inventions,
Oh
but
yeah.
it seems like nature usually has the winning ticket, the winning
Right.
solution, where they're using nature to create their antibiotics and antimicrobes and their superfoods. We can learn a lot from these
Yeah.
bees.
Now, as an engineer, okay, this is what I geek out about, is that I look at the cell. This is where where they store their honey, and when they um, do their brood. So a frame has hundreds and hundreds of cells in them.
And it's in the
And
shape
so
of a hexagon. Is that true?
right, right. And if you think about what shape is the most volume, okay, with the least amount of surface area on the side, while also fitting together the best, meaning there's uh, best use of space, right? Because you want to maximize volume and reduce the amount of wax you need to use, right? Because you have they have to burn energy to create the wax. They extrude the wax from their abdomen, and so they don't eat wax, right? They need it to build. But when you want to store as much, well, that is actually the best shape, the best geometric shape for maximizing volume and reducing the amount of wax you would end up using.
That's just
And
fascinating, right? So they're not using
Mhm.
a circle or a triangle.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, triangles fit together real well, but they don't max out the volume.
Right.
Circles
Wow.
max out the volume, but they don't fit well together. And so these are the best of both.
Brilliant. Just
Yep, they
another
are
cool
brilliant.
thing about bees.
That's right. And so we sell honey because we don't do like huge volumes. We end up Shray's gone in lot. There's a good business case for it, but this is primarily because Shray has really dove into her part in all this, which is to make products from um, the honey we got. So she's starting to make different kinds of flavored honey. One of them is whipped honey, and that turns out to be a really good seller. It actually changes the flavor to make whipped honey. It smooths the flavor out. It makes it so you're like a marshmallow, right? Where marshmallow is pretty much all sugar,
Mm-hmm.
but you fluff it up and it changes the flavor. Whipped honey does the same thing. The other thing that we ended up started doing is vinegar, and that has a interesting history because started out for us because I used to make wine, and I screwed up my wine, and
Okay.
it wouldn't clarify, like it wouldn't clear out, and I had 5 gallons of this stuff, and most people would have just dumped it out, but I was like, oh, I was like, put so much work into that, I don't want to throw it away. And then so I looked it up on how to turn wine into vinegar. And so just for everybody's information, you got to have the alcohol content below 7%. And then you want to expose it to oxygen as much as possible. So we turned our plum, you know, failed wine into a vinegar that way. And so you can convert wine into vinegar. You have to, if it's got a if it's got something in it to prevent fermentation, you have to deal with that. There's different recipes for that. The other thing is that we were picking apples, and so we would get all these. We would use the apples, the flesh of the apples, to make different things like filling and different things like that. But we would have a lot of skin and cores, and we learned it's called like scrap vinegar or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But you basically take the fragments from that and you go through a very similar process of making wine, except you promote the vinegar growth and you make sure the alcohol content is below 7%, and you get vinegar. It's pretty good vinegar too.
That sounds great. And what else? How else do you? So, what do you put anything else in the vinegar?
No, it turns out that no, it turns out that fruits have both yeast and vinegar on its skin, and so you can save the mother from one vinegar and feed it to the other. Um, so and that's something we did in this last batch. On the first batch, we were relying on just the natural process. So when things kick off, the yeast and a vinegar are kind of working together, right? So when you would make wine, you would neutralize all natural bacterias, okay? And you would introduce the yeast, and yeast would dominate, and then and then you stop the reaction um, with a phosphate, um, and that's it. But way vinegar and alcohol work together is that vinegar or yeast produces the alcohol, and then vinegar consumes the alcohol,
Right.
right? And it produces the acids. So when you take fruit and you put it all together and you leave it exposed, so vinegar wants oxidization, they want exposure to oxygen. And so when you do that, and you do the opposite with wine, but when you do that, you really promote the vinegar growth and the product from the vinegar. So yeah, there's lots of recipes out there. It turns out, and this is a really cool thing too about doing homesteading, is that this is um, old like technology or processes. Really, what we're doing is rediscovering them. Like,
True.
these aren't
Yeah.
new, you know what I mean? And
Hmm.
these are things that our grandma did or our great grandma did, and they were really good at it, you know. Um, and so there's a lot of content out there. There's a lot of really great ideas out there, even from long ago. And so it's really a process of rediscovering these things.
It is. Are you doing anything with the wax?
Yep, yep. My wife, it's one of the things she uses. I bring in the wax for the most part. So when you collect honey, there's two different ways to extract the honey. One is through centrifuge or spinning the honey, and the other is a crush comb method. We do the spinning, so we don't get as much wax that way as we would normally, but um, we do get plenty of wax from the cappings. And she makes a lip balm and a salve with it.
Nice.
And so, yeah, beeswax is a really good base for lip balm and salve.
Yeah, it's
And then
so
she
good for
also,
skincare for sure.
yeah, and she also adds, I think she does add some of the propolis to it.
Nice. Ah, that's so good. And it's
Hmm.
also, everybody knows, wonderful for candles.
Yep,
And it
yep,
just smells divine.
yeah, yeah, it does. We don't have enough to make candles. I think if you were doing the crushing method, you can we might have enough, but we primarily focus on the lip balm and salve
Right. And
with
you
the
have to
wax.
save some of the honey for the bees. You can't take all of their honey.
Right,
Is that right
right.
too? I know there's
Yeah,
so
yeah,
much on bees, with the queen and the different roles they all play.
yeah.
It's so
Um,
fascinating.
it really is, and a lot of beekeepers, they're still learning after decades.
Hmm,
And I'm only a few years in, so I'm actually considered a newbie among this crowd. So, but the the reason for that is because of the sheer volume of things there is to learn.
for sure. Now, is there a decline? The hive decline,
Yes.
is that a true thing? Or is that only
Well,
happening in commercial
it tends to
hives?
happen. It tend to happen in cycles, and it doesn't just happen in the commercial hives.
I see. Because
So, I think that these cycles, the
how concerned should we be? I guess that's what I want to know.
well, um, there was a huge die off that happened actually just um, this past winter, and we don't know what caused it. I lost a significant number of my hives in that process. Now I was able to connect with another beekeeper, and she helped me get back to where I was. Um, but it it is scary because the reality is, okay, when you say, well, how concerned should I be? It's really hard to say because we don't know what's causing we know what's caused it in the past, but it takes a few years to figure it out, you know. And so during that time, um, you know, so in the past it was trachea mites, and then there was the Varroa destructor mite that hit about 20 years ago. And so a long time ago, I think a lot of people would probably have in their memory a big scare from a bee die off. And during that time, a lot of people didn't know what was causing it. And the consensus that I've heard is that those what caused the huge die off back then were these side effects from the varroa mite. And I'll just give you, and we're still learning about that, right? Right. How the varroa mite affects all the different aspects of a hive and the health of a hive. It's far more complicated. But just to give you kind of a real general idea, and that is that bees during the summer, during the time of harvesting, they live about 6 weeks. Okay, and their egg laying, brood rearing, and hatching, and their life cycles going from um, nursing bees to ending in them being foragers are kind of built around that life cycle. And when they when you have a hive heavily infested by these varroa mites, it reduces their life, and so the bees end up dying off before at a faster rate than they're able to produce more, and a hive will die out. So that's a real kind of like a general sense. Varroa mites also spread disease, and they also cause other issues within the hive. Now, the die off that we just experienced, like I said, we don't know what happened. Um, it seems to have happened all over the country. And
Interesting.
talking,
Hmm.
yeah, it's not just it doesn't seem to have just happened to the corporate or the large beekeepers. Seems to have happened to everybody. Um, Not 100%. Like if you talk to some people didn't get too hard, but I've heard really bad numbers, like 60% or more. And for you know s- an organization that that has thousands of hives, that is catastrophic. Um, so that's happening. We're going through the season right after that, and so it'll be interesting to see how our nation's beekeepers have been able to recover from that, and how the honey supply is affected by that.
Right. And of course, that they're pollinators. So they're so important for pollinating our fruit trees and our vegetables and
Hmm.
everything.
Yep. Yeah, and these ecosystems are so complicated. They're so interconnected. They're systems. They're systems within systems. And so, I come from a mathematical background, and the um, the differential equations, and the math, and the complexity behind these things um, are off the charts. And so, what you kind of was alluding to is the fact that, okay, you have a drop in bee population. Okay, that doesn't just affect honey supply; it
Hmm.
affects a lot of things. You know, and because the interaction and these ecosystems are so interconnected and multivariable, it's really hard to pinpoint and understand exactly the impacts. So,
Yeah. And I'm just wondering if there were hive collapses thousands of years ago. And is it a natural cycle? And who knows? What can people do today to support the bee population and this bee
yeah.
industry? Is it
Well,
a
I'll tell you, there's some good news. One of
okay?
the good news is that YouTube University, makes it easy to learn these things, and
Great.
so we have all I believe we can have a lot more um, small scale, hobby beekeepers than we ever could before, because you can dive into these things and have some level of success without being a journeyman to another beekeeper. Now, I want to put this out there. Okay, this is really important. I've talked to many people who've dived in, and I admire that, and I encourage it. But you have to treat for mites. What often happens is people say that their bees leave. Okay. Now, they don't know what causes it, but story I hear a lot is they'll get bees, and they'll be gone before a full year turns.
So you're saying that
And
the bees leave the hive and they don't come back, they go find another hive to participate in?
that's the way they describe it.
Okay.
Okay. Now, what's the most likely cause of that are mice. Okay. Bees will abscond um, if there's an infestation too bad, if it's not that dying off. So either the bees are dying off or they're leaving. And most likely, if I were to make an assumption, that would most likely be due to um, varroa mites. And so if anybody wants to give it a shot, I encourage it. But you also have to be prepared to treat for mites.
Right. Are there
So
natural treatments aside from insecticides, or I don't know what they're called,
there
miticides?
are yeah, there's some people do powdered sugar baths. That's a lot of work. Okay, but that is one of the things you can do. Um, and you can do that. There's oxalic acid treatments. Oxalic acid is an acid that comes from fruit,
Mm-hmm.
but it's concentrated. Um, there you can do oxalic acid vape treatments. There's other products too that are a little less natural, um, and you buy them off the market.
Okay.
Um,
But it sounds
yeah,
like it's super important to have that to make sure that the
yeah.
bees continue to live and thrive.
Wild bees have figured it out. Okay, so wild bees, there's no such thing as wild bees really, but bees that exist in the wild have gone through the process of natural selection, and have basically become hardened towards the bromide. Um,
Interesting. Okay.
so one of the strategies that some people are trying is to try to get genetics from wild bee populations. There's a local beekeeper that does queen rearing, and he goes, and queens have their rearing flights, and he takes them deep into the wild, basically deep into the forest, and does the queen rearing far, far away from population to get wild bee genetics.
Nice. Oh, this is so fascinating. And this is
Yeah,
just a surface level introduction to bees and beekeeping.
yeah,
But this is
yeah.
so fascinating. It's something I've taken one beekeeping class, but it seems like it's a adventure. I will watch from afar. I will watch you, Colin, on your adventures. How
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, my wife wants to say one thing we can help is don't use pesticides if you can help it, and plant plenty of wildflowers.
I love that. Thank you, Ray Ray. Yes. So I was thinking, I don't want to be doom and gloom, but there's so much glyphosate and pesticides. So I think let's clean up our ag system, have people grow as much food as they can on their own properties, whether it's on a balcony, even sprouting stuff in your own kitchen, and be inspired by these folks. Colin and Shalray are really taking it to the next level and walking your talk and trusting that cosmic process that you've been divinely guided to be beekeepers and to feed our community. And I'm so grateful for that. So how can
Thank you.
people find you? We only have a few seconds left.
My wife has a Facebook page. That I'm not media inclined, so my wife has a Facebook page. She's very active on that. So if you look up Honeydew Gardens on Facebook, you'll be able to find us.
Sweet. All right. Well, the whole Santa Cruz community wishes you guys the best. And thanks for doing all the great work that you're doing, Colin and Shalray.
Thank you. Thanks, Jill.
Yeah. And let's have you guys back on again for another chat about quail eggs, because we didn't even talk
All
about
right.
so many things.
I know there's so much to talk about.
I know. Well, all the best to you guys. And thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
You have any last minute things? Because we have 2 seconds.
No, I hope to see you guys. I hope, I think that we could all support each other in this if we're all participating. Um, you know, if you're out there, say a prayer for me. We're going through the permitting process, and that's really hard. So, yeah, I would say that would end with that.
Right on. That's the greatest thing. Okay. We wish you all the best, and I hope to see you guys soon.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Bye, Colin.
Bye.